a Canadian federal minister, his Department of Justice lawyer wife, and his brother charged with cocaine trafficking all listed the same residential address. That address, owned by their parents, was purchased for approximately $400,000, sold for $1.1 million within a year, and then repurchased for just $1. Judicial conflict of interest, money laundering, mortgage fraud, political finance violations. Here's where it gets even more shocking. The minister's brother wasn't just charged once, but twice in 7 years with firearm and drug offenses. Yet, Crown prosecutors dropped the charges both times, letting him walk free, while his co-accused were convicted. Why? Why was he let go without a trial? Not once, but twice. I'm Mocha Bezirgan, and this is an exclusive investigation with unparalleled depth, one that you won't find anywhere else. On November 20, 2014, Edmonton Police dismantled a dial-a-dope drug trafficking operation, charging 4 individuals, including Raymanpreet Singh Uppal, the brother of then Minister of Multiculturalism Tim Uppal. While mainstream media reported on the charges, they failed to uncover a critical detail. The residential address listed for Raymanpreet in court records is the same residential address listed by his brother, Tim Uppal, their parents, and Tim's wife, Kiran Binder, a lawyer for the Department of Justice and a former executive with the World Sikh organization. Raymanpreet was charged with trafficking cocaine, cannabis, and cannabis resin, possession of proceeds of crime over $5,000, and a weapon for a purpose dangerous to the public peace. But just a year later, Crown prosecutors withdrew all charges against Raymanpreet and another Sikh co-accused, while securing convictions for the 2 white co-accused. Perhaps that's because the 2 white co-accused weren't fortunate enough to share a residential address with a federal minister and a Department of Justice lawyer.
And Tim Uppal was running for federal politics at the time.
Bob Ray is a concerned Canadian and a former Sikh who initially brought Tim Uppal's brother's history of criminal charges to my attention.
And Tim Uppal's wife, during this same time, was working for Justice Canada. And I find this very troubling because how can you have all of these different elements residing under one roof? You have mom and dad who own the house, you have big brother who is running for federal politics, you have big brother's wife who is working for Justice Canada, and you have little brother that is involved in firearms and drug trafficking, all under the same roof. And this is only allowed in the Sikh religion because it is socially acceptable in the Sikh religion. The Sikhs think that drugs are okay because opioids are widely accepted in the Sikh religion.
Whether the source of widespread addiction to opioids, including heroin, is due to religion or not is a separate subject. But one thing is clear, something seems off when international drug traffickers in North America are mostly Punjabi Sikhs. How can one claim to be so selfless and holy, yet be involved in poisoning other communities and destroying the image of one's own religion and community? Questions, Mr. Ray. But more on that later. After the arrest, Edmonton Police confirmed that drugs and firearms were seized in the investigation by raiding 3 properties on the south side of the city and 1 vehicle. Given that there were 4 accused, the question arises, was the Ellerslie Road property listed as Raymanpreet's address among the properties searched? Or was that residential address spared from the raid because it was also the listed address of then Minister Tim Uppal, his parents, and his wife, who worked for the Department of Justice at the time? Court records from 2009 reveal that Raymanpreet Singh Uppal was previously charged in 2008 with 7 serious criminal offenses, including drug possession, firearm-related offenses, and fraudulent impersonation, charges that carried a potential 22-year prison sentence. At the time, Tim Uppal was running to become an MP, while listing the same residential address as Raymanpreet. Just 2 months after Uppal won the election, and despite the seriousness of these charges, Crown prosecutors dropped 6 of the 7 charges and weakened the impersonation charge to public mischief, allowing Raymanpreet to walk free once again with a slap on the wrist. These 2 cases raise the following critical questions regarding public institution integrity and corruption. Why did Crown prosecutors withdraw nearly identical drug and firearm charges against Raymanpreet Singh Uppal in both 2008 and 2014, while his co-accused were convicted. Did Raymanpreet's family connections, including his brother's political position and his sister-in-law's role in the Department of Justice, play a role in the Crown's decision to drop the charges? If an ordinary citizen faced these same charges, would they have been granted the same prosecutorial leniency? Or does this case expose a double standard where political influence shields individuals from accountability?
I believe that Tim Uppal's wife may or may not have helped her brother-in-law, Raymanpreet Uppal, evade justice, as well as other people. I believe that anything that she has done in her career as a lawyer for Canadian justice needs to be audited. Not only Raymanpreet's cases need to be opened, there are many, many other cases in Alberta and in Canada in which Punjabi Sikh high-level drug smugglers have walked away without any ramifications or punishments.
We spent lots of money to obtain a large number of registry records for the property along with other records related to Raymanpreet Singh Uppal. Having a federal minister, a Department of Justice lawyer, and someone charged twice with drug and firearm offenses all listing the same residential address raises eyebrows.
But even more concerning is the transactional history of that address, which appears to have hallmarks of mortgage fraud, money laundering, undisclosed financial arrangements, and tax evasion.
On March 30, 2005, Raymanpreet Singh Uppal registered a numbered company, of which he owned 100% of the shares, listing 4565 9 Avenue Southwest as his residential address. What's interesting is that Raymanpreet did not even own this property at the time. In fact, his father would buy it later that same year. The previous owners of the Ellerslie Road address were Greywalls.
Not much is known about them, except that they sold the property to Harry Uppal on November 17, 2005 for approximately $400,000.
On July 5, 2006, just 8 months later, Harry Uppal sold the property to two other individuals for $1.1 million, making a $700,000 profit despite no significant improvements being made to the property. Toward the end of 2006, Tim Uppal made his largest single donation on record, according to Elections Canada, a $4,500 contribution to his own Conservative Riding Association from the same Ellerslie Road residential address. Meanwhile, the 22-year-old Raymanpreet's numbered company purchased the property for $2.5 million, almost entirely financed by Dan Developments, the same mortgage lender that financed Papa Uppal's purchase of the Ellerslie Road property. What's even more concerning is that even after Raymanpreet changed the official address for his numbered company, more than a year prior, the new land title still listed Ellerslie Road as his address.
Now here's where things get even more suspicious. The Ellerslie Road property, which Harry Uppal originally bought for $400,000 and sold for $1.1 million, was later purchased back for just $1. Why would the previous owners buy an inflated property for over $1 million from Harry Uppal, only to give it back for almost free?
At this time, Tim Uppal was working at TD Bank, which recently became the largest bank in US history to plead guilty to conspiracy to commit money laundering. Here's how a US Attorney General described TD Bank last year following the bank's guilty plea.
TD Bank created an environment that allowed financial crime to flourish. By making its services convenient for criminals, it became one. Our criminal investigations into individual employees at every level of TD Bank are active and ongoing.
Did Tim Uppal provide advice to his parents regarding the Ellerslie Road property, who, based on the evidence, appear to have used straw buyers to commit mortgage fraud? From the Real Estate Council of Alberta, Guidelines on Mortgage Fraud Prevention, straw buyer is defined as someone whose name and credit information are used to secure a mortgage for someone else. Even if they claim they didn't know, they can still be held responsible. Shortly after the Uppal family bought back their Ellerslie Road property for $1, Raymanpreet, who continued listing this address for his numbered company, faced 7 serious criminal charges related to drugs, firearms, and impersonation to avoid further charges.
While this was happening, Harry Uppal donated to Tim Uppal's campaign from the same Ellerslie Road address, and just a few months later, Crown prosecutors dismissed Raymanpreet's charges, letting him walk free.
No media outlets reported on this. It was thanks to Bob Ray's due diligence that this critical information was unearthed.
I think that the state-sponsored propaganda media in Canada partly to blame for the failures of Canada as a nation. Their biased reporting, their poor investigative journalism, their cover-ups instead of proper reporting are a detriment to Canadian society.
After Raymanpreet's charges were dropped, more questionable financial dealings followed. In 2011, Raymanpreet's numbered company sold its property to Dan Developments for $1.4 million, despite initially purchasing it for $2.5 million with financing from Dan Developments itself. Shortly after, Raymanpreet made his father Harry Uppal a director, shareholder of his numbered company. In 2012, the Uppal family added a third individual as an owner of the Ellerslie Road property for no apparent financial compensation. By 2014, Raymanpreet was arrested again, this time for cocaine trafficking and firearm offenses. The Ellerslie Road property was still listed as his address, the same address used by Department of Justice lawyer, a World Sikh Organization executive, and Tim Uppal himself in his largest Conservative Party donation. But again, while his co-accused were convicted, Raymanpreet walked free when prosecutors dropped the charges against him. Toward the end of 2007, while Tim Uppal was working at TD Bank as a mortgage manager, his name came out in a criminal trial regarding mortgage fraud. According to the court ruling, where one of the accused was convicted on multiple counts of fraud and sentenced to 6 years in prison, Tim Uppal's name appears as a mortgage broker who was working at TD Bank. The court documents show that a man named Harkamal Kellan recruited at least 13 straw buyers in a large-scale mortgage fraud operation. This man, Kellan, is said to be a close associate of Gohal Pervez, a slumlord in Edmonton with an extensive criminal history. One of the straw buyers appears to be Harkamal Kellan's brother, who owned 10 properties on paper. One of the properties applied through was TD Bank's Tim Uppal himself. And here comes the shocking revelation. Tim Uppal and Harkamal Kellan were known to each other as they both went to the same university together. TD Bank said if they were aware of these false representations, they would have not approved the mortgage application. The bottom line is, what type of a picture does this whole situation paint of Tim Uppal? If being associated with frauds and fraudulent activity wasn't worrisome enough, not mentioning this court case would paint an incomplete picture of Tim Uppal. In a court case from 2010, court documents show that Tim Uppal vouched for a violent community member. The accused was convicted of 1 year in prison for aggravated assault. Manpreet Grewal, who, along with his soccer teammates, chased down and viciously attacked Dean Smith after Smith directed a racial and religious slur at Grewal, who was wearing a Sikh head covering. During the vicious attack, Grewal repeatedly kicked Smith in the head, fracturing the right side of his face in 5 places and breaking his nasal passage, leaving him with such severe injuries that he had to undergo plastic surgery, had metal plates inserted into his face, and his mouth wired shut for 2 months. 14 months later, he had to undergo another surgery to remove the plates, and by the time of the trial, he still experienced swelling and numbness on the right side of his face.
Despite the brutality of the assault, Tim Uppal vouched for Grewal's character, describing him as an active volunteer, committed community member, and dedicated student.
In 2014, around the same time as Raymanpreet was charged with drug trafficking by Edmonton Police, Tim Uppal went to India and met with a minister from Punjab, Bikram Majithia. Today, Majithia is no longer a minister and is charged with drug trafficking by Indian law enforcement. It appears that there were more than one instance where Tim Uppal and Majithia crossed paths, as referenced in this court case from India. Another Edmontonian implicated in this Indian case is Raymanpreet Singh. Raymanpreet is accused of being a close associate of Majithia and of a notorious Canadian gangster, Pindi, who is currently wanted by Interpol with a red notice for narcotics trafficking, among other serious crimes. The court documents reads that Tim Uppal sat next to Raymanpreet Singh and Bikram Majithia, who are believed to be connected to Pindi. The proximity Tim Uppal had to high-level foreign politicians who are accused of international narcotic trafficking is concerning, especially considering his little brother Raymanpreet's repeated run-ins with the law in Canada. Pindi, the drug lord, is the brother of former Khalsa Divan Society president, Canada's first ever Sikh place of worship in Vancouver, BC. The same society also had an executive whose daughter was arrested in Seattle, Washington, US, and charged with ecstasy trafficking.
The World Sikh Organization has compromised the uniparty conservative liberal NDP government's political parties in Canada, as well as all bureaucracy at the highest levels. And as an ex-member of the Sikh cult in Canada, I can clearly say that the World Sikh Organization is a parasitic disease that is eating away at Canadian society.
Billed as a Sikh advocacy group, the World Sikh Organization, of which Kiran Binder was a high-ranking executive, wields significant political influence across Canadian politics. The WSO would likely have an interest in Raymanpreet's drug trafficking cases, as he is the brother-in-law of once a high-ranking WSO associate, Kiran Binder, and the same address appeared on WSO's own documents. As a WSO executive, Binder had direct proximity to key figures within Canadian politics. Among the Canadian politicians who were either WSO executives themselves or had family members serving as WSO executives are Harjit Sajjan, Jyoti Gandek, Tim Uppal, George Jahal, Jagmeet Singh, and Navdeep Bains. However, the concern extends beyond mere political shielding, seemingly protecting Raymanpreet from accountability. The World Sikh Organization is historically regarded as an umbrella organization for all Khalistani groups. Their founder, Gyan Singh Sandhu, who is Harjit Sajjan's sister's father-in-law, was interrogated by the RCMP with a polygraph in connection to the 1985 Air India bombings, Canada's deadliest terrorist attack, which killed 331 people and was carried out by Sikh Khalistani terrorists affiliated with Babar Khalsa. Today, Babar Khalsa remains a designated terrorist entity, and intelligence reports suggest that they financed their operations through drug trafficking. Although the RCMP's investigation into the Air India bombings remains open, even after 40 years, one thing is clear. The World Sikh Organization has successfully rebranded its image. It has now positioned itself in the mainstream to the extent that politicians associated with this extremist organization face little to no public scrutiny. As a former Sikh, Bob Ray denounces the WSO for hijacking the Sikh religion in Canada and urges the public to boycott politicians aligned with their foreign agenda, which is to establish an independent Sikh state carved out of India.
I think that World Sikh Organization politicians need to be banned, and the World Sikh Organization needs to be audited by US organizations to prevent future extremism and terrorism from happening in North America.
Ray is extremely disappointed with Canada's legal system. In his view, the courts and prosecutors are allowing drug dealers, particularly Sikhs, to get away with their alleged crimes. The fact that Tim Uppal's brother evaded prosecution twice while his white co-accused were convicted only reinforces his belief that Canada is a failing state.
The country of Canada has totally failed and has been disintegrated by the nefarious uniparty liberal conservative NDP parties of Canada.
Ray is also deeply concerned about mainstream political parties' failure to recognize the extent of organized crime infiltration within the Canadian government.
I have a message for Canadians. The Liberals are not going to help us Canadians. The NDP have been completely hijacked, and the Conservatives, they're not going to help us either. Pierre Poilievre, he can't even get a security clearance, so he's not even qualified to get a job at McDonald's. Pierre Poilievre cannot be trusted to work at a lemonade stand.
Ray points to recent developments in Canada's fight against the drug trade, where Sikhs appear to be overrepresented and continue to receive light sentences, if any. One such case occurred last month when the RCMP seized a quantity of fentanyl potentially amounting to millions of doses. Despite the enormous scale of the bust, both accused, who are Sikhs, were granted bail. Given how Raymanpreet Singh Uppal, a Sikh with the Department of Justice lawyer as his sister-in-law, managed to evade prosecution twice, Ray suspects that other Sikhs may also be receiving similar protections. After all, in his view, the founder of the World Sikh Organization's daughter, was appointed as a Supreme Court judge in BC directly from her role as a lawyer. Given that WSO affiliates and their family members have secured numerous political positions of power, many of which have been marred by corruption and scandals, he suspects a similar network of influence within the bureaucracy, including the Department of Justice.
It concerns me to see Punjabs that are involved heavily in the drug trade to be led off by either police investigative agencies or by prosecutors because it destroys Canadian society.
I reached out to Tim Uppal and his Department of Justice lawyer wife, Kiran Binder, for comment to ensure the accuracy of my reporting. As of the time of this publication, neither has responded. Although the Uppals have not responded to my media inquiry, a 2008 CPAC interview featuring Tim Uppal provides details about his family and their history.
And were you the responsible one, would you say, like as the oldest child and the oldest son?
Yeah, I think so. Because I started taking on kind of leadership roles really early, and I started to do that at home as well. Both parents working.
Okay.
And so I guess you had to have somebody with the house key.
Some argue that Tim should not be judged by his brother's actions, but those making this argument must ask themselves, does sharing the same address with an alleged cocaine trafficker serve as a shield of protection? Does having a family member in federal politics add legitimacy to one's illegal business activities?
I think some of the largest drug busts at the Canada-US border involve a Punjabi Sikh, and it is a display of the rot that they have inside of their community and their society. It is socially acceptable. I believe over 75% of Punjab are full-blown addicts. Between males and females, they're completely selling drugs to each other, to neighbors' kids. It is a very, very poor society. For a group of people that claim to be so highly religious that they play dress up to the maximum, you know, these Sikhs, they say, oh, we do not even shave. We treat our bodily hair as God-given. So, you know, we cover our faces with these big beards. We let our armpit hair grow. We let hair in our private parts grow our whole lives without ever cleaning our bodies because that makes us closer to God. I don't think that is correct.
As a former member of the Sikh religion, Mr. Ray also raises questions as to the integrity of prosecutions where the accused and the prosecutor are both Punjabi Sikhs.
Well, race definitely plays a significant role in crime and punishment in law in Canada, because Canada is a DEI country that basically has two playbooks for law and justice.
Now, this leaves us with the following questions. Will the mainstream media finally catch up to the story? Will the RCMP launch an investigation? What will the Department of Justice do, if anything? Will the Public Prosecution Service of Canada say anything? How will the Conservative Party justify accepting thousands of dollars in donations from an address with financial dealings resembling the hallmarks of mortgage fraud and an alleged connection to cocaine trafficking? Time will tell. If you value independent journalism that holds all people in power accountable, whether conservative or liberal, please consider making a donation at mediabizargan.com/donate. I can't stress this enough. Investigating stories of national significance comes at a personal cost, and I need your support to continue this work. If you're able to, please consider making a contribution. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you next time.